And good evening and welcome. This is Steve Fryer, and you're listening to the Expanding Light radio program. And with me on the line tonight is William Buhlman, author of Adventures Beyond the Body. Bill, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Great. All right, I've been reading your book on how to experience out-of-body travel, and I've been really enjoying it. And it's one of the few books that I've really paid much attention to lately, and really got into. And I want to thank you for writing it. I think it's one of the better books on the topic.
Oh, well, thanks a lot. I appreciate that.
Now, you've been doing this out-of-body travel for quite some time. When would you say you first became interested in it, and how did that happen?
Well, it was in 1972. A friend of mine, I was in college at the time, and a college buddy of mine had an experience where he awoke in one night and found himself literally floating above his body. And it scared the living heck out of the guy. And the next morning, he related the story to me. And because I knew this guy so well, I know he wasn't making it up. And
right.
He piqued my interest in it. That motivated me to go out and do some research. And I found a book that had some techniques in it. And I began to do the technique myself, which is the target technique, which I put in my book.
Yeah, I've read that. It's a pretty interesting and simple technique. Maybe we can talk about it a little later. For those that really don't know what out-of-body travel is, could you give them a brief definition and tell how it works?
Sure. Basically, out-of-body experiences are just the separation of consciousness from the physical body. There's varying degrees, but just so that your audience will know, the difference between out-of-body and near-death is essentially, in a near-death experience, the physical body, of course, dies temporarily. And in an out-of-body experience, there is no biological death. It's strictly the separation of consciousness. And it occurs very naturally. According to there's been about 3 major surveys done in the last 5 years, and it's now pretty common knowledge that 25 to anywhere to 45% of the population will have a spontaneous out-of-body experience sometime in their life.
What are some of the symptoms of going out-of-body? I know I've experienced some of them in the book, but maybe you could relate a few of them for our listeners.
Well, there's actually quite a few. On my webpage, I have a list of 11 different phenomena that's associated with out-of-body. Briefly, I'll share with you some of the most
Okay.
common. One is sleep paralysis.
And what is that?
Basically, you awaken, you're conscious, but you can't move your physical body. This occurs generally during sleep, of course, or during a nap. And it's really scary to people that have the experience.
Yeah, I know. I was talking to a friend of mine up in Wisconsin this weekend and found out that this is a very common experience for her. And, very terrifying as well.
Right. It was for me. The first time that it happened to me, it scared me. It also happens to children a lot.
Mm-hmm.
What I've been doing, I have a survey on my webpage. It's become the largest online survey ever conducted. So far I have well over 8,000 people have responded to it.
That's pretty good.
And the results have been phenomenal. And what I've discovered is that a tremendous number of children have this happen, and the parents are pulling out their hair. Because it's not only is it a sleep paralysis, but often the sleep paralysis is also combined with a buzzing, humming, or roaring sound,
mm-hmm.
or some kind of loud sound that's quite frightening, especially to children. And there's also a high energy sensation associated with it.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that's often reported is people hear voices. You can't move, there's strange noises going on, and you hear someone in the room. It could be footsteps, and often it's a voice. Sometimes they're calling your name, but or it could be just almost like background sounds, like the TV is on.
Right.
All of these things happen simultaneously. In my book, Adventures Beyond the Body, I refer to all this phenomena as a vibrational state, because this is the prelude to a fully conscious out-of-body experience. All of this phenomena.
Over the years, we've all been hearing about the phenomenon of near-death experience, and especially with what's his name? Daniel Brinkley, right?
Yeah.
And I know he had spoken about trying to create some kind of contraption that would produce this effect of near-death experience. But it sounds to me like the out-of-body experience is nearly the same thing and much more controllable, and you don't need any contraptions.
Right. This is a natural experience. One thing I like to emphasize to your listeners is that out-of-body experiences are just a natural state of consciousness that occurs spontaneously for a lot of people. It's not some strange event that you try to induce. Look at it from a little different perspective. If most people believe that we're spiritual beings, and they have no doubt, oh yes, I'm a spiritual being. If we are, as everyone assumes, then why can't the spiritual body of a person be able to separate from this temporary shell and truly experience what they are?
That is a good question, Bill.
It's silly to think that we're locked within a biological body for 70 years. It's only the self-concept of the individual that has created that limitation.
Well, how do you think we got that self-concept, so many millions of us?
Well, it's basically conditioning in our society. We've been conditioned from the day we're born to accept the belief, and that's all that it is, a belief, that we are physical beings. I mean, from the day we're born, it's my hair. When you look at yourself in the mirror, you're constantly identifying your consciousness with this pound of flesh, essentially.
Right.
And not only you, but everyone around you saying, "Oh, doesn't your hair look good?" I mean, it's a million times that is reinforced to us throughout our life is that we are a physical body. And of course, that is incorrect. It's just a temporary vehicle of consciousness that we're using for expression.
And what is it that you would say that we actually are?
Consciousness. In my terminology, the way I view it, we are pure consciousness. Other people may call it spirit, but I look at it as consciousness.
Would that be like a soul, or do we have a soul? How would you relate the soul to consciousness?
Yeah, I feel that soul is consciousness.
Okay.
I really do. I don't separate the two. I'm quite aware, and in Adventures Beyond the Body, I do go into detail about the multiple dimensional universe and how we are, not only is the universe multidimensional, but that we are multidimensional. So we have different vehicles of expression, and our mental body is not the same, I feel, as consciousness. We use our mind is, in a sense, a tool. And we also have what a lot of people have come to term as an astral body. Of course, I refer to this just as a non-physical body.
Mm-hmm.
We are multidimensional. I think that's one of the exciting things about this study is that people have an opportunity to finally discover and explore what they truly are. That's why a lot of people are becoming interested, and more than interested, they're becoming excited about this entire realm of study.
Well, Bill, you in the book, it didn't seem like you were very spiritual before this all started for you. That you weren't an atheist, but you weren't very religious or spiritual, were you?
No, I certainly wasn't. I was an agnostic. I found no evidence to support the concept of spirituality around me back in the 70s. Before my first experience, I was, I guess, close to an atheist as someone could be.
Mm-hmm.
But after I had my first experience, it changed me forever. I mean, it suddenly absolutely, not believe, because I was never into beliefs. I just felt that the beliefs, and I still do today, beliefs are a lack of knowledge. And the power of an out-of-body experience is that we can obtain the answers for ourselves. We can have the experience and know for ourselves. We can verify the information. And it makes it changed me completely. Because then I realized, my God, I am more than just a body. And not only that, but I have the ability to actually explore this non-physical universe, whatever you call it, spiritual universe.
Right.
And that, to me, it's still an overwhelming concept. You would think after a while it would sink in, but every time you have an out-of-body experience, it truly is a spiritual experience.
Okay.
And it really does awaken you to your, let's just say, the immensity of the universe and our place in it.
Now, I've spoken to quite a few different people about this topic since I started reading your book, and most of the people I know are fairly spiritually oriented. But it sounds like many of them believe this is a dangerous experience, or potentially dangerous, and are afraid of even discussing it, much less engaging in it.
I'm glad you brought that up. That is one of the things that I'm trying to dispel. Matter of fact, I'm working on another book now, and in it I'm having an entire chapter which is titled The Early Spiritual Explorers. What's ironic about that? People do. There's a lot of people that feel that, oh my God, that's a dangerous thing to leave your body. But yet, all the great founders of all the major religions had out-of-body experiences, and they write about them. St. Paul writes about them in 1 Corinthians. The first 3 lines of Revelations talks about St. John's out-of-body experience when he says, I was caught up in the Spirit on the Lord's day and heard behind me a great voice, as loud as a trumpet. And what is that? The loud voice, as loud as a trumpet. What is that but the vibrational sounds that I've been talking about?
But you could make the case that because it is seemingly difficult, and when you have that paralysis or you hear that buzzing sound or the voices, people would say those are devices to keep us from going out of body, and it'd be more natural not to go out of body.
See, I look at it completely differently. 180 degrees. Those sounds are like an early warning system. In a sense, it's like a prelude. It's like a reminder. When I do workshops, I teach people how to use those sounds as that's your measuring stick for that I'm beginning to have an out-of-body experience. I've already made the transition. And I go into that in quite depth. The sounds are not, the only reason the sounds are scary to people is ignorance, to be blunt about it.
So they're just signals to let you know you are separating.
It's a natural phenomenon. When you enter the next dimension, when you transfer consciousness to your non-physical body, that in the course of the transfer, there are sounds that occur. And it is not, many people consider that, it's an evil, it's a warning of evil, and all this. That's an ignorant statement by people that just don't have any experience. Those sounds, the sleep paralysis, all these things I was talking about earlier, the voices, even being touched, are all actually little guideposts along your way that, yes, I'm having an out-of-body experience.
No.
That's how I look at them now. They're very valuable.
Let's move on to some of your experiences. Before we get into some of the things you're doing now, what kinds of early experiences did you have that convinced you were indeed out of body and that it was a positive experience?
Well, if you like, I can relate my first experience.
Sure.
I was doing a technique which I have in my book, which is essentially the target technique. What I did is I selected 3 things in my mother's house that I had made. They were things that I had made when I was in grade school. And you know how moms keep these little things. One was a metal ashtray, a doorstop, etc.
Waste basket.
Yeah, all the guys out there have made all these little things in shop and all.
That's right.
And I visualized these items as I fell asleep every night. Now, what happened, the first 3 weeks, nothing happened. And to be quite frank, it was very frustrating.
You tried this every night for 3 weeks.
3 weeks, and nothing happened except maybe my dream recall was
you were determined.
But nothing happened. But I continued. It was only a 15-minute technique as you're about to doze off, so we're not talking about some kind of huge time commitment here.
Okay.
So I continued. Why not? I'll try it some more, even though I was getting a little bit, let's just say I was not a believer to begin with, so I was starting to lose any motivation I had. By the fourth week, as I continued to do the technique, I was living in an efficiency apartment and my bed was against the wall. I awoken on the fourth week and I just felt different. And as I stretched out my hand, I was laying on my side, and as I stretched out my hand actually entered the wall. And it's like I could feel the energy substance of the wall.
That must have been weird.
It was shocking. It was that moment. And when I looked at my hand, it looked bluish. It's that moment that I realized, my God, I'm out of body. The next thing I did, I took one hand and grabbed my hand, or my arm, and it was solid, surprisingly. And I thought of standing. And the next thing I knew, I was standing by the foot of the bed, looking down at this lump, which of course was my physical body. And at that moment, then I started touching my body. And I was saying to myself, vividly remember saying, oh my God, it's real.
Did you think you were dead?
No, because I had read the book and I knew that that's what I didn't know exactly what to expect, but I knew that was an out-of-body experience. And it didn't cross my mind. That's one of the things that do happen to people. They have these experiences that haven't read anything. Mm-hmm. And I could see where some people would think, oh my God, I'm dead.
Well, that's what you hear about in the near-death experience. You're floating above your body.
Many of these near-death experiences, by the way, are actually out-of-body experiences. And when I read these books, as a writer, I read quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And many of these, there's a lot of confusion about the two.
I'm sure there is.
But it was incredibly exciting. When the next moment, when I awoken, and my body was numb, I couldn't move it. It took me about, a minute to get back into sync where I could even move my body. And I tell you, it changed me. I wrote down everything that happened, because then I realized everything that I had learned, everything that I had thought was true, I had to be completely reappraised.
Now, a little further down in your book, a little further along, you say that you had a contact with a dead relative. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, that happened probably a year later or so. I was at my mother's house, and I'll make this short, but I started to have an out-of-body experience. At that time, I had gotten, after the first year, I started to get pretty good at it. And in this experience, I'll tell you the whole thing. Okay. I floated up through the ceiling, and I actually got stuck. And this is going to sound silly to people, but this actually happened. I started to go through the ceiling of my mother's apartment. And then as I did, I felt like I got stuck.
And was there an attractive young lady upstairs?
Yeah, that was my motivation.
Great motivation.
I must admit that was. I was kind of interested. I figured I'd see what she looks like. And mm-hmm. I got stuck in the ceiling for a moment.
Why is that, do you think?
I think it's because I was probably not supposed to be nosing around in that area.
So there are some controls, some inner controls on this.
There's much more control than many people think or talk about.
Like you couldn't go into the girls' locker room, for instance.
Well, it's possible, but I think there's a certain limitation that we place, and I'm not saying there's an outside limitation. Our higher self or soul, I think, will limit our certain things that will occur.
Based on your intention.
Exactly. We're directed to the experience, I think, that is best for our evolution. In many ways.
Okay, so you're stuck in the ceiling, and
so
then
anyway,
what happens?
at first I was a little bit upset, but then I calmed down, because it's essential when you're having an out-of-body experience to, number one, you must maintain your full attention away from your body, because any random thought, you will return to your body.
So
That's probably the only rule there is in out-of-body exploration.
You talk about that over and over throughout your book.
I know, because it is so critically important. I almost hammer it.
Yeah, it's almost as if every experience ends with, a thought of your body, and then you snap right back in.
Because that is exactly what happens. And a lot of people that have problems controlling their experiences, that is the number one reason for lack of control. Any random thought, and you will return it. The key to control is to simply forget about your body.
Focus. Yeah.
Anyway, moving on, I thought of the door, and I immediately come down from the ceiling, and I began to walk. Often many people will have better control walking, because there's no limit to how you can move. You can fly, you can float, you can walk. Anything you want to do, you can do. Anyway, I walked through the door and out into the living room. And as I did, as I was just about to exit, I'm in the living room of my mother's apartment, and I'm about to exit the door, and someone calls my name, and the only thing I could hear was the word Willie. It was a male's voice, and no one calls me Willie, except for my uncle. My uncle has been deceased now at this point for approximately 6 years. And then it hit me. Even though just that sound of Willie, and I turned around, and there was a young man standing by the sofa. And even though he did not look like my uncle, because he was so much younger. When my uncle passed away, he was older and he was heavyset. But I knew immediately that was my Uncle Hilton. It's a strange thing. Just the voice alone will tell you. It's almost like that instant communication that occurs without a physical body.
So somehow when we die, is it that we don't age, or we assume a body that isn't so old, or what happens?
I think what occurs, I've had several experiences now. Our non-physical body is a direct result of our thought. And when we make that transition called death, which of course death is an illusion, because no one actually dies, they just shed the physical body. But when we do make that transition, our predominant thoughts will basically generate the non-physical body that we experience. And what most people do, I found, when they make that transition, not all though, but most people will assume what they consider to be their ideal form. In other words, even though I'm 47 years old, I don't think of myself. In my mind, I'm not 47. I'm 30.
You're a kid.
Even if you ever talk to someone that was 80, they'll tell you they don't feel like they're 80. They feel like they're 35.
Right.
So
exactly.
We will assume our mind will literally create the vehicle, mold it.
So it's much easier to do when you don't have the physical body.
Oh yeah, because it's more thought responsive. The non-physical body is much more thought responsive because it's of a much higher vibration. Now I'm not talking about soul body or what people would consider to be soul. I'm talking about just your astral body. And of course that's what most people experience after they make that transition.
We're speaking with William Buhlman, author of Adventures Beyond the Body and How to Experience Out-of-Body Travel. I'm Steve Fryer, and you're listening to The Expanding Light. We'll be right back right after this. Stay with us. And we're back. This is Steve Fryer, and you're listening to The Expanding Light radio show. And with me on the line is William Buhlman, author of Adventures Beyond the Body. Bill, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, good. I'd like to continue our discussion of out-of-body travel by saying that I have read quite a few other books than yours, and many of them are quite old, and most authors have referred to this out-of-body experience as astral travel. I know in your book you sort of, you'd like to clarify that term, and it seems kind of limiting to you. Is that true?
Yes, it does. I don't use the term astral travel for one main reason. I felt that it had certain connotations that I feel were inappropriate. Many people nowadays consider the term out of body to be, let's just say, a better term for the subject.
Why is that? What's wrong with astral travel? What is it?
Well, there isn't. I think overall, astral travel, even though it's the same thing, I'd like to clarify that. There is no difference. It's just semantics. Spiritual travel, psychic traveling. All of these things are out-of-body experiences. There has been, let's just say for 100 years, there's a certain occultic issue that's been attached to the term astral travel by many people. And one of the purposes of my book was to demystify this topic.
Isn't it true that once you learn to travel out of body, that many of the Eastern religions call the astral realm the sort of the lower realms of experiences?
Yes, they do.
Maybe that's why we shouldn't strictly call it that.
Another good reason why I don't like that term. The astral realm, many people consider to be a very, I don't know where it comes from, but a lot of people consider that to be a very, let's just say, less than positive place, which is not true.
Well,
but there's a certain belief system attached to it.
My understanding is that they're lower astral, middle, and upper, let's say, and that if you found yourself on the lower, it would be, let's say, not so nice.
That's true.
Sort of like in that experience, that movie Ghost, where they come and take the criminal's soul away, and it's very scary and dark.
Very few people, I like to, just so that your audience will be aware, I have received thousands and thousands of people's out-of-body experiences in the last 18 months, whether online or through the mail, because I have my address right in the back of the book. And I have, out of probably 8,000 letters, 8,000 experiences that I've received, almost every single experience has been very, very uplifting. Enlightening, one way or another. Now, some of them, I'm not going to sugarcoat it.
Okay.
Some of these people did get scared. They heard things. New things were happening all around them. And some of them were scared, but it wasn't what they perceived to be a negative experience. Most of them realized, after they've had, let's just say, a half a dozen experiences, that they have to adapt to a new energy environment. That there are other beings in the universe. We live in a crowded world, and you have to be accepting of other life forms and other types of energy.
Okay.
And that's what it truly is energy. I try to, my best I can, is not to put any negative or positive connotation. It's like the physical world. I mean, is a lion a terrible beast, or is it just one of nature's gifts to the planet? It's really a matter of how you perceive things.
Well, you seem to explain very well that, first of all, you cover a lot of quantum physics, which I appreciated, and you seem to explain very clearly. But overall, you seem to be saying that your consciousness or your vibration would take you to whatever level of reality you needed to go to.
Exactly. That's the reality of it.
How many different realities are there, would you say?
I could not even begin to count. I would say it's beyond our mental capacity to even comprehend. It's far more than what anyone ever... You hear all these stories about, or even in quantum physics now, they're saying that there's 24 dimensions or 28 dimensions, and like the superstring theory, which is now popular.
Right.
All of that is none of that is really accurate. I have found no limitation.
Well, let's start with the sort of the basics so people can get an idea of what's possible, let's say on the beginner level, and then maybe what's possible for the more advanced traveler.
Okay.
Now, it seems to me when you would think about going out of body, the first thing you would think about would be, say, traveling around your house or your neighborhood, and then maybe you'd learn how to fly, and then as you got the hang of it, you might try different parts around the world, but still pretty much a physical reality. Would you say that's true?
Yes, it is. Most people during their first few experiences will experience their physical or a duplicate of their physical reality, but it will be very, very generally very mundane.
Okay.
When they leave their body, most people will just walk around their house. They begin, which isn't a bad way to begin.
Yeah, sort of like training wheels.
It is. Mm-hmm. I mean, you have to learn to walk before you can fly with control. Not that you couldn't fly immediately, but most people just feel comfortable walking around their little house or apartment, and they explore it. And I tell you, that in itself is incredibly exciting when you do it the first time.
In your book, I think you cover a man who'd been in a wheelchair for something like 20 years, and when he learned to go out of body, he was flying.
Oh, absolutely.
And very excited about it.
I have received a lot of letters like that, hundreds of letters from people that are disabled, people that are blind, and have, let's just say, some of them were spontaneous, and they were having these experiences, and they just didn't know what they were. But a lot of people, I think, were given my book as a gift or something.
Okay. Yeah, it is a gift if you think about it.
And they started practicing the techniques that I have in the book, and they started having experiences.
Now, there was one woman I read about her experience online last week who said she traveled not up, but down. She went into the core of the earth. And she related a very wild and wonderful experience. By the way, there wasn't any burning fire down there. But not many people think about going into something like as solid as the earth.
Yeah, you know, it's another one that I've had just lately. I've received quite a few letters from people that have went into the oceans.
Oh, good idea. Yeah, swim with the dolphins.
I think one of them, the initial idea was to swim with the dolphins because they always wanted to do that. So they did it. And then they got bored, and they decided to explore, and they went down to the very bottom of the ocean. But there is no limit. That's what makes this so exciting, is that there are no limits.
It seems to me that if, let's say, a scientist got a hold of this, he could really discover firsthand how physics works.
Absolutely.
Or maybe even come up with a new invention. Have you been able to go to any higher planes where you could learn something beyond what you could find in books?
Oh, absolutely. There's no limits. Most people, though, are quite concerned with just physical things. I mean, what I teach, especially in my workshops and through the book, is how to accelerate our personal evolution, because that's what we're here for. That's why we have a physical body, to have experiences, to interact, to learn through trial and error. And we can accelerate that process by having out-of-body experiences.
It would seem that we're living in a time of where things are speeded up and evolution is speeded up. So perhaps this comes at a good time for us.
I think it does. I think that's the purpose of it now. I think as we're getting close to this new millennium, I am seeing it all around. My book now is in 4 languages, and I get mail from all over the world.
Did you have any trouble getting it published initially?
No. It's kind of a strange story. I wrote it, and matter of fact, a couple people read it and said to me, "Man, this is heavy stuff. Nobody's going to publish this." And I sent it off to an agent who immediately picked it up, and he submitted it to HarperCollins, which is the largest publisher in the world. And in 10 days, they bought the proposal. It happened instantaneously. It was unbelievable. It shocked me. It was so quick. This
book is very well written, and I highly recommend it. I've read quite a few other books. Most of them seem to sort of dwell on how you get out of body and speculate a lot about the experience. It seems to me you've done a lot of homework in addition to your own exploration, so you've got a very comprehensive view here.
Well, I try. It took 3 years to write the book. There is a lot of information in it. What I'm most proud of, to be quite frank, is the chapter on control. Nowhere, anywhere in the world is there literature on how to control out-of-body experiences. Details, like a troubleshooting guide. And what I've included in the second to the last chapter is Mastering the Experience, which is basically a troubleshooting guide for those who wish to pursue this. And I go into details about whatever the situation is, how to handle it. Granted, I probably don't cover every single thing, but I've covered what are the essential ones that I've run into in 25 years of doing this.
Now, what's your basic control technique? How does this work?
It's very simple. And after separation, I simply request control. Number one, I do not think of my body any way, shape, or form. I've conditioned myself to forget about it.
Okay, so that's probably
That's
the toughest
number
thing to
one.
do. Mm-hmm.
And that's very important because so many people have a hard time with that. I never found that to be that difficult. I realized after the first year that I just had to do it. And after a while, it becomes fun.
So this is not something you're probably going to master in a couple of weeks here.
Well, you can. Everyone is different. I've run into people that have mastered this on their, at least from what I've read and what they've said. Some people are just naturals because of their, I think, past life influences.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And some people have a difficult time. But getting back to this control issue, the key to control is to request awareness now or consciousness now when you're out of body. It is absolutely essential for most people because it brings your consciousness level, it enlightens your consciousness.
So,
It's a difficult thing to explain on radio.
So it seems to me that it's really your intention all the way here. So whatever you're thinking about, if you can think about, let's say you get out of your body and things look fuzzy, you would say what?
If things are not clear, I say clarity now, and it works for me.
It's that simple.
It's that simple. Whatever quality you need. And for many people, I'm glad you mentioned that, many people in their first few experiences, their vision is very poor. I wear glasses, so maybe that's the reason for me. But many
Me too.
people relate that.
Uh-huh.
But as soon as I say awareness now or clarity now, my vision will snap into focus.
So these are like mini commands.
Exactly. And they're essential. Anytime I begin to slide, or what I in my workshops, I refer to it as sliding, because it's a state of focus. Just like in the physical body, some days you're sharp, some days you're not. When you're out of body, every time you have an out-of-body experience, there's different degrees of awareness. The spectrum is unbelievable. And what some people have a tendency to do, if they allow themselves to not continue to focus their attention, is that they will begin to slide into a dreamlike state.
What's the difference between out of body and a dreamlike state?
A degree of consciousness. It's that simple. I know there's a lot of people can make this difficult, but it's essential that you maintain your conscious awareness. When I have an out-of-body, I'm a lucid dreamer, so I know the difference between a lucid dream and an out-of-body experience.
What is a lucid dream?
It's when you start to become conscious in your dream. You start to become aware in your dream.
Aware of what's happening.
And you can begin to even control it, which is quite shocking for many people when they have the experience.
Well, wouldn't that still be the same? If you can control your dream versus your out-of-body experience, how do you still tell the difference?
Because in a dream, dreams are generally very, let's just say, surreal.
Okay.
They're created by your mind. They're very colorful often. There are characters involved. It's almost like you're playing a part in this self-created play.
What do you think the purpose of these dreams are?
Well, again, everything is evolution. It's a learning experience. Just like even unconscious dreams, we're gaining information. And many times we're re-experiencing and just having experiences and different levels of consciousness.
So it might not be a dream as much as it's a really wacky world somewhere.
Right. What I'd like to emphasize to your listeners is that an out-of-body experiences are generally very mundane. They're shockingly mundane. They're just like, for most people, they're very much like the reality you see in the real world, or what people would consider the real world.
But what do you get out of them if they're so mundane? Why did you have such a strong drive to keep going with it? Because
the answers are available in the non-physical. The physical world is a result, the direct result of, it's what I term in my book the epidermis of the universe. It's a thin, dense outer layer of the universe. The answers lie inward in the higher vibratory realms. And if we can consciously go to those higher realms, we can obtain the answers first. Any answer that we wish. I know that sounds like a lot to say.
Let's bring this down to earth. Give us an example, let's say, that's happened to you recently. What kind of answer? Let's say you had a question you didn't know how to answer it.
Well, I'll tell you one that happened. I had an interest in some past life influences. I was not a believer in past lives before I started having out-of-body experiences.
Okay.
And matter of fact, I went out of my way to reject it because maybe because of my upbringing. But I just found that to be ludicrous to have the idea of a past life. One day when out of body, I requested this experience of any past lives that I may have had. And it was overwhelming. The next thing I knew, and I relate one of these experiences in the book, I was in this huge library, and I went to almost what appeared to be like a card catalog and pulled out my file, and suddenly it was like an immense layers and layers, pictures and pictures of past lives become available to me.
Sort of like your Akashic records, would you say?
As many people call it that. I don't know, I hear these terms thrown around. Mm-hmm. I just know what I experienced, and it was overwhelming to me. And on another occasion, I wanted to know what my last past life was.
Yeah, that's in the book.
Yeah, which to me, I'm still influenced by that. And I was a German soldier during World War II, and I was killed on the Eastern Front.
You were a tank commander, right?
Right, I was a tank commander, a German tank commander.
And how would you say that's influenced your life, knowing that you were a tank commander?
You realize how that is, especially our lives that we've had previous to this one. They often have a strong impact on our personalities, our drives, our motivations, the way that we attack a problem or approach our lives. It also has a degree in what are we here to learn now? What is this? We're the end result of this massive chain of events. And many people fail to look at us that way. But we are, right now, you and me and the entire audience, is the result of, and actually the number is beyond my comprehension, but just so let's say thousands and thousands of years of experience.
Okay.
And once you tap into some of those past experiences and you start to gain those lessons and you start to remember who you were, and it gains, I think you have it's a blessing, because you begin to realize where you come from. Why am I? Why is this the way it is? Why do I react this way to a situation or issue? And then it all begins to come together. That's why. That's where that comes from.
I'd like to know a little bit more about perhaps your experience with other beings that you've met. Many people, of course, when they have near-death experiences, report, say, meeting Jesus or Buddha or some spiritual figure. Have you met any beings like that so far?
I have never been interested or made that request. I know I've been asked many times, well, why don't you go see Jesus? That was not, you're drawn to what you're interested in. What I have done, and I relate in the book, which I think is far more important, mm-hmm. and I've included it in Adventures Beyond the Body, is a technique on how that we can re-experience our higher self or soul.
What's that? What is that like?
I think that's the core experience that I tried to build into the book. I put it into my last chapter, which is called Advanced Explorations, and it's available for everyone to do it. It's a transcendental experience where it's impossible to describe, but what's important, I think, is that all of us have the ability to have this type of experience. In other words, when you're out of body, you can literally make the request, I want to experience my higher self, or whatever terminology.
Or I want to meet Jesus or Buddha or whatever. Right?
Yeah, see, to me, the answers are not found in someone else. Maybe in the first 5 years of my experiences, I realized that the answers are within us. And I started to focus more on going inward into my higher self to try to find the answers, because that's where they are. In other words, the answers are never found in someone else. They're always within us.
So this is really a good way to experience knowledge and wisdom and reality directly.
Absolutely. That is the center point of my book, is how to have essentially a profound spiritual experience. Not to believe in someone else, not to trust in someone else, but to have an experience. Every listener in the audience can have the experiences of St. John and St. Paul and Mohammed. Well, we have that God-given ability.
It would seem to me that perhaps this is the reason the religions have been so strict about speaking to spirits or having any kind of out-of-body experience.
Issue.
Because they want to keep control, correct?
Absolutely.
Over the masses.
Absolutely. It's a control of the masses. St. John had profound out-of-body experiences. St. Paul had profound out-of-body experiences. And Muhammad had profound out-of-body experiences. And because they made the effort. They weren't tied down to a belief system that said, oh, you must go through the priestcraft to talk to God. You must pay your money. That's foolishness. We have that ability. Each one of us can connect and have a profound spiritual experience. What I try to do in Adventures Beyond the Body is to provide a step-by-step practical approach to having these type of experiences. And then provide guidance along it. As much as I could, in my humble way, try to provide guidance to people that are using this as a method to obtain what people call Christ consciousness.
No.
Because it is possible for us to have these experiences.
In terms of depth of experience, your own experience, how far would you say you have gone and still be able to maintain your focus?
I have no idea. There appears to be no limit to how far you can go.
Well, I want to know from you, what has been your wildest experience, most profound experience?
The most profound experience has been definitely my higher self experiences that I've had, which now are the ones that I focus upon. When I have an out-of-body experience, I don't walk around my house and
not anymore.
Stuff like that. I just don't do that. What I do is when I start to float out of body or step out of body, I'll immediately just demand, and I make that demand upon myself, that I will experience, I now experience my higher self. And immediately what it feels like is that you're shooting upward through layers of color and stars. It's incredible. It feels like you're moving at the speed of light. And it is so intense. The first 3 times that I did this, I didn't make it because it was too intense. I'm just being blunt about it. And other people have told me the same thing. They say, my God, how can you possibly hold on? And I just say, you just have to. Here's one area where you have to have faith. Because I'm not a great believer in faith. I'm a great believer in experience.
Direct experience. So would you say now that you've had these experiences, are you afraid to die?
No. Death is silly. It's a total illusion. That's one of the benefits that I outline in the book, is that you quickly, it's such an illusion that it's almost laughable, because you fully recognize after you stepped out of your body, hundreds of times, you realize what just a simple shell it is. It's just a tool that I'm using on the physical world to get out, to do what I have to do here. It's simply an instrument of expression.
Well, William Buhlman, I want to thank you for being on The Expanding Light. And I want to encourage the listeners to go out and find his book. Whether they're in body or out of body, go look for Adventures Beyond the Body, How to Experience Out-of-Body Travel. And William Buhlman is the author, and that's Buhlman. And again, I want to thank you for taking the time to be on The Expanding Light and to explain your experience of how to do out-of-body and the benefits.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
And I look forward to having you back again sometime.
I'd love to.